So tell me, how you feel about Scars now it's out in the world?
Awesome. When you fight for something for 14 years and it finally comes true and people really like it and it sells really well, and all the guidebook studies say that the thing you said people would like, they do like, it's pretty good. It's very good.
So if you can give us a brief synopsis of the fight for poison.
A brief synopsis of the fight for poison. Okay, so I open up Legends and I see poison for the first time and I go, this is awesome. So I end up getting a job at Wizards, and Tempest is the first set that I say, I want to be a designer, give me a chance. I convinced them to let me lead Tempest, which nowadays we don't really do. The first thing you do isn't lead a large set, but somehow back in the day we did that. So I convinced them to let me lead Tempest, and Tempest had in it a major poison theme. In fact, Bogavati, which is the code name for Tempest, is named after an Indian mythical place of poison snakes. So the whole code name of Tempest was, hey, this is a poison set. But anyway, Poison got removed from it. I put it in Unglued 2, which was a sequel to Unglued, which got put on hiatus, so that never happened. And then I had to bide my time. I got a little bit into Future Sight, and then finally, I saw my moment. The Phyrexians were returning. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for Poison. Bam, Poison is in. And I had a long fight with that. It went through a lot of incarnations, but finally we figured out Infect, which was, I think, the right way to do it. And everybody got on board, and voila, 14 years later, Poison is made.
Wow. All right, so let's look back a little bit. Tell me about Zendikar and Worldwake and Rise. Are you all very happy with how that turned out?
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing. See, all my stories sound the same. All my stories is, I had an idea, people thought I was crazy, and then it works out. That's all I just keep telling that story again and again. But seriously, the thing that people don't realize is, kind of the role of the designer is to come up with the unknown, and the role of sort of everybody else is to check it and make sure that you're not doing something crazy. So on some level, I'm supposed to come up with the crazy, and they're supposed to make sure it's not too crazy. So essentially what happened with Zendikar was, I had a real belief in a land theme of the sets about land matters and that land meant something. And everybody else were like, okay, what else you got? So when I used to call it Lands of Palooza. That was, whenever I was trying to sell the set. And eventually, Bill Rose, who's the VP of R&D, came to me and said, okay, because Mark, okay, we have to change whatever your code name is. We can't call it the land set. Because every time we say the land set, people are like, they go, I don't know about the land set. So give me a new name. So I said, okay, we're gonna call it the money set. Anyway, people like the money set. So what happened essentially is we made Landfall, and I think once R&D saw Landfall, they realized the potential of it. And then we crafted an adventure world around it, and anyway, I mean, it took a while to get everybody on board, but we eventually did, and Zendikar now is like, it's the benchmark. Like, the funny thing is I had to fight for it. It was really something that I had to fight tooth and nail to get people to accept, and now it's the benchmark. It is like, everyone compares, is this design as good as Zendikar? Have you matched Zendikar? So, it's funny because there's a famous story, the guy who made Ren and Stimpy, one of the early Ren and Stimpy episodes was the Happy Happy Joy Joy episode, where Ren makes a hat to force, Stimpy makes a hat to force Ren to be happy. And he had a fight to get that episode on the air, and then later on the network are like, why can't you make more shows like that, I feel like Zendikar's kind of become that, where it's become this benchmark of quality, except, go back 4 or 5 years when we were making it, and I was fighting tooth and nail for it, so. But anyway, Zendikar came out really well, it sold really well, people liked it, I'm very happy. I think Rise was, Rise is Tinsman set, Brian Tinsman made the set, and it definitely was out there. I mean, Brian loves doing out there stuff, and you think I like out there. Brian loves out there. I seem like the normal guy combined to Brian. And I think Rise really did some neat things. I think the limited environment I know is going over really well, and I think it was definitely something that was different, and I don't think Magic should be that different all the time, but I think every once in a while it's fun to just sort of go outer limits and do something really kind of crazy. And Brian loves doing that, so next time we stick Brian on a set. Every time we get Brian on a set, Brian's like, what can I do? What crazy thing have we never done before? Wow. So that's we have to rein him in, because crazy is good, but you don't want too much crazy. You need like a little bit of crazy.
Do you feel like there's not enough cards in Standard now that we sort of battened down on the number of cards?
I believe that I believe there's enough cards for Constructed. I think Limited, I think the shrink size has made Limited, just with the large set, a little different than it used to be, and I'm not sure. I mean, I think there's enough to create what you need, but that it's real tight. Like one of the things about designing large sets now is you don't have a lot of the fluff we used to have, and so I think we have the bare bones that you need, but it's missing a little bit of the, I don't know what to call it, but the extra sort of, you know, I had a little extra space to play around with that I don't have anymore. For example, in Scars of Mirrodin, I had some themes that were in the set that you can see because they're in small number, but like in the set, for example, red had a sacrifice artifact theme, black had a sacrifice creature theme, and there were a bunch of cards that cared about that. And then there was a bunch of cards that if you sacrifice them, when they die, they had an effect, but when you sacrifice them, they had a bigger effect. Like for example, is it Perilous Mare?
Yeah,
what's the one that, so Perilous Mare used to be, when I die, you know, do 1 to something, but if you sacrifice me, do 3 to something. You know, and the idea was, oh, the decks that like to sacrifice things, it was extra good for them, so they'd grab it early. And so red-black had this whole theme that you could draft around this sort of sacrifice theme. And what happened was we just didn't have enough space, and so it kind of got turned down a little bit. And it's there, and if you get the right cards, maybe you can draft it, but it's not something you can normally draft. It's really a special occasion kind of thing. And so it's a Furnace Celebration. Like that's the one card. It was called Sakagogo in design. That was like the one card that kind of got left behind that you could sort of see where it was going, but we had development had to shave a lot of it off just for space.
I see. So are you pleased with how Standard shaped up right now in terms of the big decks and the themes and people are playing around with sort of your work?
Well, so here's the thing. People always ask me about the Standard environment, and one thing that I try to say is development cares a lot about the Standard environment. They spend a lot of energy on the Standard environment. They're very, very focused on it. Design, I'm not at all focused on it. Like I make cards, by the time like Standard is relevant, I'm 2 years in the future. And so it doesn't do me a lot of good really to focus on the Standard environment because there's not a lot I'm going to do, that by the time the stuff I'm working on, those cards aren't even there yet. Like I'm working on a Standard environment, which everything in my environment isn't out yet. And so it's very hard to focus on the current Standard environment because they're just literally, they don't even overlap. Now development does, and it's important to them, and so it's not like R&D doesn't pay attention to it, they do, but I don't. Right. And I mean, I like to see what people do. It's sort of fun to see how people use your cards. And I think what happens with Scars is very linear, meaning it very plays with itself. And so what we're seeing right now is it's not blending as much with some of the older stuff because the older stuff is very powerful, and in order to make it work, we can't put all the powerful stuff up front. So for example, you know, Infect is there, but until you get more Infect stuff, it's not quite constructed yet because, well, we spread out the Infect stuff. And so, you know, like I think once people have all access to different Infect things, look, maybe that's gonna become a constructed deck, you know, but it's not yet. And so I think in Limited, you see all these themes that are going to seep into Constructed, but really aren't there yet. And it's the nature of linear sets. Like some sets are more open, some sets are not. You know, I mean, Zendikar was less linear. I mean, it had allies and it had a few linear themes, but there was a lot, like Landfall is perfect in the sense that you can have a whole deck full of Landfall, or you can have one card of Landfall. It doesn't really, you don't build around it necessarily. And so I think what you're seeing right now is the Zendikar block is having a lot more influence on Standard right now than Scars is, although that's going to change with time, especially as the next set comes out.
Sure. Okay, so here's a better question. What's your favorite design right now in Standard?
What's my favorite design?
Yeah, so what card is your favorite design right now? That is in the current environment.
Okay, what card is my favorite card?
In the current environment.
Of my kids, which one do I like the most?
Which do you love the most?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of cards that I mean, so Alexis Jansen made a card called Wormcoil Engine, that Belugatron, that I think is a really, really well designed card. I made what's it called, Clone Shell, Meat Puppet.
Meat Puppet.
I made Meat Puppet, and I like that card a lot. Mimic Vat. Who made Mimic Vat? Maybe Gottlieb. Someone on my team made Mimic Vat. I think that turned out to be a really cool card. I love Proliferate. I love Infect. You know, my biggest sadness with Proliferate is when I turned the set in, there was a lot more Proliferate. It was in common. It was like you were meant to be able to draft around it, and it proved to be a little much, so they had to tone it down. But I love Proliferate. You're like Geth's Tomb of Geth. Tomb of Geth, yes. Yeah, I love Tomb of Geth. I draft that thing like nobody's business. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I'm a big fan. I really like what we were doing with Scars. I mean, it's funny. Like, I was very proud of Zendikar, and I really like what Zendikar did. And then, you know, I did Scars, and I'm super proud of Scars. And the funny thing is, like, I just handed off a couple months ago, Shake. And I'm really proud of Shake, but the Shake's next year, you know. And it's like, it's funny because people talk about stuff, and I'm like I have to focus on Scars. Like, I tell people this. So when a set comes out, when I'm at the pre-release for a set, for a large set, not only is that set, like, I've handed off the next year's set by that pre-release. So you're like, what do you think of this set? And I'm like, well, I had to compartmentalize that set because I had to go do another set. And you know what? I'm working on the set after that. Like, right now, I'm working on, you know, I'm finishing up Rattle, and like January I'm starting Line, which is the second set in, you know, hook, line, sinker. And I'm like, and then I'm pitching my 6-year plan. So like, I'm thinking about Friends, Romans, and Countrymen, and all the sets after that, you know.
So you're working on another 6-year plan, or you're finishing the 6-year? No.
Well, no. Scars was the last 6-year plan, and I'd done some tentative work. Obviously, we know what Shake is, we know what Hook is. I have a real good idea what Friends is, but I'm sort of fleshing out the 6-year plan. I'm probably a little late in the sense that the idea is we always want to know where we're going, and so normally it's a 5-year plan, but I always end up making 6-year plans for some reason. So I made a 6-year plan, and so, because part of what I want is, I want us to think long term. Like, I'm really big on the idea of continuity. So one of the things I always explain is, if you watch a TV show, like, I'll use Buffy the Vampire Slayer because that's an awesome show. That's a lot like our show. That's a very cult-oriented thing. Like, the people who are into it are really into it. And that one of the things that Joss Whedon did, which I liked a lot, is that he would do something in season 1 or season 2 that like would pay off in season 5 or season 6. And you didn't feel like he was just making things up. You felt like, no, he actually meant to do that, and he paid off later. And I want us to, I like when we do that. For example, the thing about Scars of Mirrodin that I think is awesome is, when we made Mirrodin, we knew, Phyrexia was already there in Mirrodin. The mycosynth, that's the Phyrexia influence. That was like, it's not like we retrofitted it or went back and said, wouldn't it be neat if you go back and look at Mirrodin, look at the books, it's there, you know. Like, they already had started their invasion when you were there last time. And then 7 years later, you're seeing the payoff on this thing that was just a background thing, you know. Wow. That is awesome. So I love stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons people talk about why I'm so excited for Scars is, we set this up 7 years ago. Now he's Poison, a 14-year journey. Also, we set the story up, 7 years ago, we're paying it off. So like, Scars are the culmination of all sorts of things, so it's kind of exciting to see it happen. It's people are responding wonderful to it, it's selling really well, tournaments galore. It's fun to spend this much energy and care about something and then really, really have it, pay off like this is paying off.
Absolutely. So, As much as I hear about planeswalkers, do you even try to design plane? You know what I mean? Like, because development is like, everything changes a bajillion times. We change the numbers, we change the cost. Do you just say like planeswalker A and in the file and just like ship it and then they figure it out?
Here's the thing. So, creative tells us two things that we have to then make cards for. They tell us who the planeswalkers are, they tell us who the legendary creatures are. So who are the characters essentially. And that happens late in the process. So we tend to design them near the end of design because, they're busy getting stuff out the door. Design works ahead of them. And so we're always like, come on, I know you're working on this upcoming set, but we need to know 2 years from now, what's going on? And so they'll tell us, and then we will design preliminary stuff. Usually what we figure out in design is, like, I'll think Venser. Well, Venser, his big shtick is teleportation magic. That's what he does. So we're like, okay, well, let's get abilities that feel like teleportation. Now, some of the abilities change, that it's not exactly what we had done, but we got the feel that we wanted, and development respected the feel, and even though they tweaked a couple of the abilities, they kept the teleportation feel that we were going for. Koth was designed as an a red aggro guy, that we really wanted something that was like bam, 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 and had a different feel from Chandra. And so, they changed around what he did, but the general essence of what he was very much there. And so in Elsbeth, for example, we wanted to match her with her old, like whenever we redo a planeswalker, we want to feel like you can look at the two planeswalkers and go, this feels like the same person. Like they feel like they're somewhat, in the same area. And you want to be different because you don't want to just be a repeat, but you also want it to be like we want Elsbeth to feel like Elsbeth and Jace to feel like Jace. I mean, that's very important for us, that there's continuity of the characters. And so, but design, I mean, the big thing about Planeswalkers is there's 8,000 knobs on it, and development's all about knob turning, right? So, I mean, we set things up, but then, yeah, I mean, Planeswalkers have a lot more development, you know. Design can turn over some cards and development go, oh, fine, rubber stamp, go. But Planeswalkers, they're so hard to do that, I mean, development's going to just, you know, twist knob after knob to try to get it right.
Yeah. So tell me about the new Great Designer Search.
GDS2. So what happened was, here's the story, is 4 years ago, Randy Buehler was my boss at the time, and Randy says to me, okay, Mark, finally in the budget, we have a design internship. Because we had never had a design intern before. And so I said to Randy, I said, can I fill this any way I want? And Randy said, well, what do you have in mind? And so I said, okay. Because one of our problems we've always had with designers is the way they get developer interns is they come to the Pro Tour, and the skill sets that you need for developers, you can find a lot of that on the Pro Tour, which is, you know, are people good at analyzing things and figuring out and trying to break them, and, you know, developer really wants people who can break down things. But that design has a completely different skill set. And my problem is, well, where do you find designers? I didn't know where to find them. So I said, here's what I want to do. I want to have a reality show. I want to sort of go out and, from my audience, find good designers. And the tricky thing about design is, Magic is 17 years old. So it's as much craft as it is anything. There's so much knowledge you need to have. Because I've had designers who don't know Magic and have come in and tried it in Magic, and there's so much craft they have to know that it's hard for them to do it. So what I needed was people with design skills, but that knew Magic. And so I convinced Randy to let me do the first Great Designer Search. And it went over like gangbusters. You know, the stat I always say is, we hired 4 people, all 4 of them today still work on Magic. In fact, here's an even better stat. If you, from the start of the GDS people coming to Wizards, there's not been a Magic design team, not one, that hasn't had one of the 4 GDS guys on it. We haven't had a non-GDS design team since they got here.
Wow.
You know, and I mean, it's not like there's that many people that do design, and we majorly affected, you know, the upgrade of design from the GDS 1 was tremendous. So I wanted to do GDS 2, but it's a lot of work, and I had to get, you know, permission and such. So the good news is I had an ally this time. So my ally was Mark Globus, who was one of the first GDS guys who got a job, and so he was very invested. And so what happened is he and I basically worked together to try to figure out what to do. And one of the things we knew is we needed to update it because while it was great for what it was 4 years ago, look, the world's changed. And what we really wanted was something that incorporated the audience. Like, we wanted something that everybody can be involved in, not just the, you know, 8 guys that are doing it. And so we came up with the wiki and the idea of having a shared universe, and that, you know, the designers are sort of building one universe that they keep working on, one world, rather than every design is a completely different thing. And so the other big difference is last time we were looking more for card construction, and this time we were looking for vision. We want people who can have an idea and they keep building on that vision, because that's a real, as design skills go, it's the one we're most in need of. It's a hard skill. And so it's something we want to try to craft and find more people for. So anyway, so we put it together. We had over 1,000 people apply. We had our multiple choice tests. It's always controversial. So let me add, because people always ask about this, so I'm gonna just, let me lay down the line. One of the problems with it is 1,000 people apply, or over 1,000 people apply. I don't have the manpower, and being the manpower is me, I can't read everything. There's no way for me to sift through 1,000 people's thing. I just don't have the ability to do that. And so we have to do something that is objective to be able to narrow down, so I can get to a smaller group of people that I do have the ability to read. And be aware, I read all 101 design tests. You know what I'm saying? I spent a lot of time. That's a lot to process, because not only is it a lot to read, but you have to think about it. Like, you have to understand the world. Like, is this a neat world or not? You know, I had to process 101 worlds. So I have to do something objective. So the reason we do a multiple choice test is I need something objective. I need to get down. And the reality is, do people fall through the cracks? Yes, they do. Because there's no way for me to take 1,000 people and get it down to 100 people and be perfect. You know, and we do the best we could. I took the test, I ran past R&D, we cleaned up questions. Were all the questions perfect? No. But the answer to people is, look, we graded on the curve, you could miss 6 questions in advance. So even if you missed 1 or 2 questions that were, yes, and a couple of them, I admit, were not greatly worded. Question 6, 91% missed question 6. Although to be fair, it's graded on a curve. So if I change question 6, so it's 45 to get in rather than 44. But anyway, there are good people. The system, people will fall through the cracks. There's no way for me to narrow down from 1,000 without that happening. I do believe we have really good people. I do believe the top 8 we got was a very strong top 8. I'm very excited with them. I'm excited what they're doing, and hopefully I have great respect for what they're doing. I know the judges are kind of harsh because we are trying to really sort of put them through the paces, but I don't want people to think that means that we don't have great respect for what they're doing. What they're doing is insanely hard. Insane. So for people that watch Project Runway, so what they'll do is, Project Runway is a show about designing clothes. So they'll take them to a hardware store and go, okay, use things in the hardware store and design clothes. And you know what? In normal fashion design, they don't tend to do that. They don't go to the hardware store. So we're doing the same kind of thing. We're throwing them in the fire. We're giving them 5 days to do something we'd spend months to do because we want to see what they can do. We're testing their mettle. And the reality is, I know it's impossible. I know what we're asking is very hard, but we're judging them to see what they can. I mean, I understand what they're capable of, and that, the judges, I think the judges are trying real hard to treat them like peers and say, look, we're gonna go after your ideas and say what we think of them, And while we are very polite to each other, we're not mean person to person. We are vicious with ideas. I've worked on something for months. I work on a mechanic for months, fine tuning it, and if we have a play test, and the person will play it for 5 minutes and go, yeah, that sucks. That's reality. When you work on something, people are going to give you a very honest response on the ideas, and that R&D is brutal on the ideas. I know we talk about the ideas being your babies, but your baby's ugly. That is the nature of the thing. And that as a designer, you have to understand that because, look, if you don't have a little bit of thick skin, your ideas have to stand up to themselves. You can't just go, well, I like it. I talk about how I'm always selling my ideas, that I can't just say land matter makes sense, we should do it. I have to design landfall and go, hey guys, we'll play landfall, play this. And they go, oh, that's kind of cool. In fact, the same way where people were very dubious about poison, and we finally found the right way to do poison, and when they played with infect, they're like, oh, this is pretty good. Oh, I think we can print this. We like this, And so a lot of design is finding the right execution of things. And so the GDS guys, look, I'm putting them through the paces. I'm making them do what we do. Yeah, it's harder than we do. It's in shorter time than we do. It's with less resources than we do. But hey, the one thing people always talk to me is they say, I get interviewed a lot and they say, well, what do you think of your job? And I'm like, I have a dream job. I love my job, And the thing I now say is, look, 1,000 people are willing to go through hell to be my intern. You got a good job when that is true. And I love the GDS. I love I think the people that are working on it now are really good. I definitely am hard on them because I feel like we're trying to give them a serious feedback, but I have great respect for them. What they're doing is really hard. I hope people don't think that we don't know that, and Ken is a little snarky, I know, but our judges are honestly trying to help and honestly trying to give them real feedback to say, this is what we want. We're not trying to break them down, we're trying to help build up their ideas. And that requires some bluntness and, and like I said, hopefully people, if you care about design, you should be reading the GDS. There's more design information in that thing than anywhere else I've ever seen on Mad Design. It's like my column times 20. In fact, it's word count my column times 20. So.
Oh man. Let's see. Is there anything? Okay. Power creep. How do you feel about power creep?
How do I feel about power creep?
Do you think it's like is it happening? Is it a real thing? Is it something you guys think about? Is it something you think about in design?
It's something we think about. No, it's not a design. Power level is not a design thing.
Okay.
I know, in the GDS, they'll go, I can't believe you let them make a blah powered blah, whatever. I'm like, look, if it needs to cost them more, development will make it cost them more. I'm not going to worry about that. Here's the big thing on power creep is you want every set to feel powerful. You want things to be exciting. But if we truly increase the power every set, we're going to kill the game. And development understands that. And so what we try to do, we call the Escher stairway, which is you want to create the illusion of things getting more powerful because you want people to feel like, ooh, this is exciting. But in the reality, you don't want to actually raise the power level. Now, let's in the secret. Here's the secret how we do it. What you do is you raise the power in one area and you lower the power in another. And what we do is we just keep raising different areas and lowering other areas. And so people focus on the new thing, so the new thing's exciting and powerful. And you tend to notice that the old thing is not quite as powerful, you know. And so what happens is we just keep shifting. I talk about pushing the pendulum, you know, and that we keep pushing the power pendulum, like what matters. And so like lightning bolts in the environment for a while, and that's really good, but it's not always in the environment. At some point lightning bolt goes away, and then, okay, well, direct damage isn't quite as strong as when lightning bolt's in the environment, you know, or we bring back, you know, pick whatever, but I mean, when we have certain strong things, or we make new cards that are strong, it just keeps pushing them in different places. And I think the goal of development, much like design, is just moving around. Don't let it stay in one place. It's fine if White Weenie is good, but White Weenie shouldn't be great a year from now. You know, it's fine if Control is good, but it shouldn't be good a year from now. It's fine to, you know, pick whatever archetype you like. We like to have, you know, different archetypes show up in different amounts, you know. And so the trick is we want the power level to always be fluctuating, but never in mass going up. That's the problem.
Awesome. So, I've got 26 wonderful minutes of content. I think that's enough. Is there anything you would like me to ask you? Is there anything you would like to talk about? Throw that out.
Why don't you ask me about Mirrodin Besieged?
All right, I would look. Normally I don't, because I know you're just gonna be the I can't tell you.
Nah, I mean I can.
All right, so tell me what you can about Mirrodin Besieged.
Okay, so one of the things that I talked about this year is that the Scars of Mirrodin year. So there's in design, there are certain years that really redefine what we do, and I think that the Scars of Mirrodin block is a watershed year in that it's really us exploring block design in a different way. And here's how. It's not the blink matter set. It is not like we took some mechanical element and we're just playing up that element. What this block is about, and I think it's going to show you where blocks are going, is it's about a story in the sense that the design is trying to do something and tell you something, and there's something happening. And so here's how it works. We introduce you to a world. Now we're going back to a world we know, so there's some familiarity, but we go to a world, a familiar world, Mirrodin. We let you know in the first set, okay, here's this foreign entity in this world. Now, once again, it's an entity you know. The Phyrexians have a lot of history, you know. So I think the set had a lot of. You came into it knowing some things, so there wasn't a completely unknown world. But you came in, you see Mirrodin, you see where they're at, you see Phyrexia, and you get a sense of, okay, there's some bad stuff going on here. But the first set was really just setting up the world. The mirrors didn't even know the Phyrexians were there yet. Okay, so we come to Mirrodin Besieged, and they find out Mirrodin Besieged is the war. You know, the two teams, like the two sides are like, the Mirrors are like fighting for their lives because these foreign guys want to take over their world. You know, and the Phyrexians are like, look, this is what we do. You know, we're here, we infect, this is what we do. And that really, I mean, the Phyrexians are, in horror, there's a lot of archetypes. And the Phyrexians are an archetype that's a very popular horror archetype, which is, I call the plague. Examples might be Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Borg, zombies, like in a zombie apocalypse type thing, like Walking Dead, in which we are an entity, we're kind of mindless in that we just grow to grow, and that we're gonna make you into us. And how do you stop us? Because there's no centralized, you know, we don't plan or plot, we just kind of evolve, and if you just stop one of us, well, the rest of us is going to get you, you know, and how do you fight that? And the Phyrexians are that, and the point is, they live to spread, that's what they do. So we get a world, we get Mirrodin, these pretty kick-ass people, right? Last time we were there, they were no weaklings, and we introduce one of the biggest villains of all time, say, okay, here's one of the greatest worlds and one of the biggest villains, let's clash. So the middle set, Mirrodin Besieged is the war. You're gonna see them fight. You know, there's two new mechanics, one's the Mirrodin side, one's the Phyrexian side. You know, the set's 50-50, and you're gonna see them clash. It's all about them fighting. And when you see the set, it's like, you know, they are fighting, that's what's going on. And that each side has created weapons to fight the other side. Like, now they understand who the other side is. They're like, okay, well, my opponent does this, well, I need to do this. There's countermeasures, you know. And so each side is kind of fighting a war. And the cool thing is, the third set, Action, well, who wins the war? You know, and that's the big thing. One of the things we're playing up is, well, if Mirrodin wins the war, then we have, you know, Mirrodin Pure. You know, if Phyrexia win the war, then we have new Phyrexia. Like, well, who wins? And that, we've laid a lot of stuff down, and there's reasons each side could win, you know, and there's a lot of, we really want the audience to get involved in this. Now, one of the things I've explained is we designed the world, we made it, we have a story to tell. It's not like they're voting or anything. You know, we made the world, it's what it is. But, you know, I really want the players to sort of root for people because we're trying to create a fun story for you, and that there's a very interesting conflict here. You know, who are you rooting for? And it's funny because people say, well, clearly we should root for Mirrodin, they're the good guys, but like, you know, Phyrexia has a lot of history and a lot of, you know, it's a big part of Magic. In some ways, I think they're the ultimate bad guys of Magic. You know, that, you know, if Magic is Superman, they're Lex Luthor. I mean, you know, if it's Batman, they're the Joker. I mean, they're kind of the ultimate bad guys. You know, they go back to the very beginning. When you look at Urza, you know, like they were the first bad guys. In Invasion, they were the bad guys. And so, you know, I personally have a lot of affinity for the Phyrexians, you know, and so I mean, it's fun. I mean, who's going to win? You know, and as you'll see, we lay a lot of stuff down, just clues and things to look for. I mean, Mirrodin Siege definitely starts giving you some ideas of where things might be going. And each side, they're fighting, you know. I mean, Mirrodin's fighting for their life, and the Phyrexians are doing what they do. If you haven't seen that, we made some videos of each side, sort of pitching their side, which is awesome. So you can link to those. But anyway, Mirrodin Siege, like I said, it's a fun set. Mark Gottlieb was the lead designer for it. So if you want to see the very first ever Mago design, he was there. Both Ken and I were on the set. I can't name the whole team from the top of my head, but I know Nagel is the lead designer for Action. So it is chock full of good stuff. And so go buy it. It's fun.
That's fantastic.
I always like the fatties.